Joining me now is Jay Johnson. He served as President Obama's Secretary of Homeland Security for the final 3 years of his administration. And Mr. Johnson, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, Martha.
I'd like your reaction to what Mr. Falwell just said. He talked about it being political correctness.
Well, it's interesting. Sometimes people have more in common than one might realize. Like Mr. Falwell, I'm an attorney. Like Mr. Falwell's father, Reverend Falwell, my great-grandfather was a Southern Baptist preacher born in Lynchburg, Virginia. My great-grandfather was born a slave in 1860 in Lynchburg. He was freed by Abraham Lincoln when he was a child. He taught himself to read and write. He put himself through school, and he founded a church called the Lee Street Baptist Church in Bristol, Virginia in 1890, which is still there. And it's in that vein that I'd like to respond here, both as former Secretary of Homeland Security and as an African American. President Trump said this week that Jefferson and Washington were slave owners. Where does it stop? Where does it end? I think most Americans understand, most African Americans understand that many of the founders of our nation were slave owners, but most of us are not advocating that we take them off the currency or drop Washington's name from the nation's capital. I have cousins whose names are Washington, and they're not changing their names. They're proud of their name. What alarms so many of us from a security perspective is that so many of the statues, the Confederate monuments, are now modern day becoming symbols and rallying points for white nationalism, for neo-Nazis, for the KKK. And this is most alarming. We fought a world war against Nazism. The KKK rained terror on African Americans for generations. And so a number of Americans, rightly, Republican and Democrat, are very concerned and very alarmed. And I salute those in cities and states who are taking down a lot of these monuments for reasons of public safety and security. And that's not a matter of political correctness. That's a matter of public safety and homeland security and doing what's right.
I think President Trump, the administration, would talk about that as a slippery slope. And we're here in Washington, D.C. I'm in Washington, D.C., Virginia. There's Jefferson Davis Highway. There's Washington Lee High School. Where should that stop?
Well, you know, that's a good question. And I think that's a judgment that has to be made more at the local level. And Mitch Landrieu, mayor of New Orleans 2 months ago, gave a very thoughtful speech on this. And so communities have to make judgments about this. A lot of these monuments are being moved to places of history. But my concern as the former Secretary of Homeland Security is we see white nationalists now, neo-Nazis, using these symbols as rallying points modern day. And that has to be addressed. We saw what happened in Charlottesville, and we have to avoid repeat occurrences of that.
And I want to go back to President Trump's comments and what Mr. Falwell said. Is the media overreacting to this? Did the president just speak his mind? Did he make it clear in your mind?
Well, I don't think the media is overreacting. The media rightly covers everything the president says. And what the president doesn't seem to grasp here is that our history is no doubt delicate, it's complicated, and you have to understand history to be president. I tell public audiences, those who know history learn from it. Those who don't know the mistakes of history are bound to repeat it. And so I'm very concerned that this president is frankly dividing us when he should be bringing us together. That's one of the jobs of the President of the United States. It's part of the job description to bring people together, particularly in times like this of high anxiety, high stress. And I would encourage him through his words to try to do that, not just speak to his base, but to speak to all of America. He is the president for all of us in this country.
Do you think the election of the first African-American president brought out some of these groups, the KKK groups, brought them back? How much of a role did that play, do you think?
Throughout his entire public career, Barack Obama has talked about bringing people together. And I know he dedicated much of his presidency to doing that. He talked to all American people, particularly in times like this. So I think that's a very unfair suggestion. His entire career was devoted to bringing people together.
I want to turn now to what's going on in the White House and some of the turmoil in the White House. Steve Bannon leaving the White House this week. What do you think that says with Bannon leaving, and we've got behind, put on your Pentagon hat, if you will, from years ago? What do you think it says? He surrounded himself with generals. They remain. And what do you expect going forward?
Well, that's interesting. I don't think anyone would have expected we'd have so many retired general officers serving in civilian positions today. There's been a lot of talk this week about people resigning from the White House, whether people should resign from the White House. We saw a number of his advisors resign from advisory councils. Frankly, if John Kelly, my friend John Kelly, or my friend Jim Mattis came to me and said, I'm thinking about resigning from this White House, I'd say absolutely not. You have to stay. As John reportedly said, it's country first. And we need people like John Kelly, Jim Mattis, H.R. McMaster to right the ship.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Secretary Johnson.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.